All right, hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez, and we want to welcome those of you who've been watching us from all over the world, whether you're watching us on regular TV or on the portable TV app. We're going to begin with a story that could send literal shockwaves through the global economy. According to the Chinese news agency, China is going to begin recalling or selling off the U.S. debt that it controls. Now, this, by the way, would be a very poignant message that it's sending about the U.S. economy, both from a pragmatic standpoint and from a psychological standpoint as well. The message that it would be sending to the rest of the world. China owns more of our debt in the United States than just about any country in the world. So why would they be doing this, right? Well, think about it. So just today, as we reported here as breaking news about an hour ago, the U.S. Federal Reserve came within moments of being pressured into lowering interest rates below zero. In the end, they pulled back from taking them into negative territory. But even that buildup of what they might do was significant enough. So China is worried that when you combine what the Fed has already done in buying back bonds and pouring billions into banks, in printing $2 trillion to pump into a sputtering economy in the United States, what you have is the makings of a weaker dollar. In other words, as experts describe it, the U.S. currency will be devalued. And what China is essentially saying is, we see a storm coming, and we're going to start getting out of the way, while the getting out of the way is good. So what does this really mean for the global economy, right? Who wins? Who loses? And how is this going to affect you and me and the rest of us? We're going to tackle these questions here on The News with Rick Sanchez, where we believe it is time, yes it is, to do news again. All right, here's the list of the questions we think he'll be asking. What will happen if China sells off the U.S. debt? Can a protest go too far? And should you be fired for how you protest? And what is the history of barricades and law enforcement around the White House? But we're going to begin with what is a blockbuster of a story. China is finally going through with it. They're beginning to sell off more than $1 trillion it owns of the U.S. debt, our debt. So why are they doing this? And what does it really mean? We're going to drill down on all of this, but we're going to begin with a RT Boom Bust host, Ben Swann, and this explainer.
The U.S. Federal Reserve's endless printing of U.S. dollars is resulting in a new consequence from one of the largest holders of American debt. We're talking, of course, about China. According to new reports, China, which is the second largest foreign creditor, has decided to not wait for the devaluation of the U.S. dollar and is actively selling American debt. Keep in mind, during the first quarter of 2020, the Fed printed more than $2 trillion, with more on the way. Last year, China got rid of $110 billion in U.S. treasuries, and within just the past few weeks, they have dropped another $10 billion. Aside from the massive printing of U.S. dollars, another major issue for the Chinese has been talk of the Fed moving to negative interest rates. Now, as of Wednesday afternoon, the Fed announced it will not pursue that policy of negative interest rates at this time. But the discussion of negative interest rates has been going on for several months now. According to Standard Chartered economists, the federal fund rate at minus 0.5 or even minus 1% will result in a significant drop in government bond yields, which would facilitate Washington's debt servicing. The concern from the Chinese is that those negative interest rates will not benefit the value of the dollar, and that U.S. currency, as a result, will inevitably become cheaper. Now, keep in mind, American debt is a widely held and extremely desirable asset in the global economy. Whatever debt China does sell is simply purchased by other countries. For instance, back in August of 2015, China reduced its holdings of U.S. treasuries by about $180 billion. Despite the scale, this sell-off did not significantly affect the U.S. economy. But the difference between 2015 and 2020, well, there are three major differences. Number one, we're talking about the incredible amount of liquidity the Fed has poured into the market just this year alone. Number two, an attempt by the Fed to go to negative interest rates. And then number three, the issue of a global pandemic that has devastated economies around the world. For the News with Rick Sanchez, I'm Ben Swan.
Ben's good enough to join us live to take us through this. He's going to be joined by George Galloway. So what we're doing with both of these guests is we're offering you the business perspective and the political implications of this story. Ben, I want to begin with you. Look, I just called around some of my sources, and when I asked them why China was doing this, what they told me is that China is tired of seeing the dollar as the world's only currency, and that this is just the beginning of them, China that is, creating or competing and making their own currency at some point in the future. Can you confirm that and explain that to us?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. The one thing I would push back on is the fact that they said this is the beginning. I think you can go back 5 years, 6 years, and say the beginning really began when China, Russia, India, and South Africa began working together as BRICS, and Brazil began working together as the BRICS nations. That was the real first move, I think, to say we're going to get rid of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. China doesn't like it, and other nations don't either, because it puts them in a politically disadvantageous position and economically disadvantageous position. And so what we're seeing right now is the continuation of that effort, and certainly China is not going to hold U.S. debt forever. They're going to sell it off when they can. As we mentioned in the piece, in the past they've done this, but never to the extent that they're pushing for it now, and certainly not at a time when the U.S. is doing so much to devalue its own currency.
You know, we are not a business show. We are a news program, The News with Rick Sanchez, which is why we see this particular story as one with vast geopolitical implications. Can you take us through that, George Galloway?
Yes, of course. The dollar was king for a long time. People don't like to be ruled by foreign kings, and they are looking for ways out of it. And there are various ways out of it. Russia and China, for example, have been very big buyers of gold over the last few years.
All of praise and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahawashi, Bahashem, Nakaha, Kadash, and the Bahana to the Elden Apostle of the Mason who do well and who taught us this truth, peace, blessing, and salvation. To you, Aki, I'm more pushing this truth to the four winds of the heaven and be on the forefront of this spiritual war. So, it is another GMS news and a prophecy, see. And here we are witnessing what we call the fulfillment of a certain measure of time, or we are witnessing a period of time where this rulership, or this current rulership, the last leg of the Roman Empire, is coming to a standstill. See, is coming to a standstill. You see, and when you talk about empire, you mainly talk about races of people. You see, you mainly talk about races of people, and who is in charge of the current rulership of this planet. Yes, Esau Edom. Yes, we are witnessing the fall of Esau Edom, as it was prophesied in the whole book known as the Bible or the Scripture. You see, so in this video, in this news, you are listening to a breakdown about Esau's kingdom, and when it's come to his power structure. See, because in any empire, kingdom, or country, you have what we call power structure. When you go to the Mesopotamian Empire, you have what we call agriculture. Agriculture back then, it was a power structure for the Mesopotamia. And when you go to the Canaanite, it was a sea traveling, you see. But when you come to Esau, Edom, you see, you have three major power structure. You have the monetary system, you have religion, the Roman Catholicism, which in Latin is Catholicus, which means universal. That's where Islam stemmed from. But you have the military. You see, the monetary system is located over there on England. As a military, we are talking about the US, you see, and the religion over there on the Vatican. So, talking about the US, you see, is the government which is in charge of the current kingdom, you see, of the current kingdom, you see. And then what you are seeing here is this different nation. The Lord put a spirit on them to come against the last leg of the Roman Empire, or we call it America. And in this news, what you witnessed is China is dumping the US debt, see, for two major reasons. The first reason is the dollar, which acted like the king of the earth, see. Esau used the dollar to leverage his weakness all over the world, because the dollar was one of his power structure, see, among the three main power structure of this kingdom, see, to put a high interest on people, usually, and things like that, you see. So the dollar is losing its hegemony around the world, you see. It is value. It is coming to a point where when you buy something in terms of dollar, it is not what you call, it is not an equal balance, because what is money? Money is a means of exchange. You see, if I give you $1 and you give me one burger, see, that burger should have the same should carry the same value as that $1. But what is happening is there is an equal balance, right? That one burger is increasing in value, but the dollar is still at the same point, so that is an equal balance, you see. And this other nation, they know that is the abomination, man, as the scriptures speak. That's one reason they want to dump the US debt. The other reason is, they are tired of America, man. They are tired of Esau policing the whole world. That's where the so-called BRICS come in. The so-called BRICS come in. BRICS, it stands for Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa. It's like a block, you see. It's like a block, you see. And when you go back to history, these blocks or alliances were created when you are about to experience a major conflict, you see. Why? Because before you have wars, what you do is you are looking to be independent economically. Because when you go to a war with a certain country and you are using their currency, what they will do is they put sanction on you, and you won't be able to move your military. Okay? You won't be able to do your logistics, because to move military here and there, that's known as logistic. You see, so this nation, what do they do before they go to a war? They are looking to be independent economically, and they know war is coming. That's why they are rushing to find ways to be able to circumnavigate around the dollar. So see, before we proceed further, let's get the scripture. Let's get the scripture. Second Ezra 4. This is Second Ezra 4. And verse 33, it say, and unto these things Uriel the archangel gave them answer and said, even when the number of seed is filled in you, for he has weighed the world in the balance. So the Lord put this world in the balance, and he divided the time. See, a certain empire will rule from here to here, certain empire will rule from here to here. You see, that's him putting this world into a balance, man, until the given time come into fruition. See, and that's what you are witnessing right now. You are witnessing the end of this time, and the end of this rulership, and the end of this world, man. See, and that will be met by the second coming of our Lord Yahushua, man. You see, so whenever there is a changing in time, you see, or whenever we are approaching the fulfillment of a certain measure, you see, going all the way back to Babel, to Assyria, to Nineveh, to the empire of the Persian Mede, to the pagan Roman Empire. See, whenever we approach a certain fulfillment of time, or whenever we approach the changing in worlds, you have a certain indicator. See, you have a certain indicator in which certain people, you see, namely the prophet, look upon, and they tell, or they foretell that we are coming to an end of this age. You see, and for a certain age to come to an end, it takes time. That's why the scripture tell you, for he has weighed the world in a balance. By measure has he measured the time, and by number has he numbered the time, and he does not move nor stir them. You see, so you may have certain brothers who are very anxiety about America coming to an end. You see, and don't worry, man. This kingdom will come to an end at the given time, at the given measure. See, that's why you are seeing all of this sign, all of this base pain, man. You see, and to give you an example, if you have a large ship and you want that ship to dock on a certain harbor, what you do is you take time to put that whole thing into a standstill. You don't just rush, man. You will wreck the whole ship, man. And that is America, man. And when you consider all of this, his and ruling of us, since the time of Egypt up until now, this is the biggest empire, man, the Lord have ever created, man. See, this is a magnificent empire. That's why the Lord wanted to bring it down in a fashion. That's why you are seeing all of the things which are going down. You have the locust, you have rumors of war, and you have one of the major Esau, a power structure is crumbling. You see, and when you have let's say three pillars holding a certain thing, if one pillar collapses, what happened? that things get off balance and fall down. That's what is going on, man. The Lord is crippling Esau's power structure, increment by increment, man. Slowly, see. Let's continue. And he does not move nor stirs them until the said measure be fulfilled. So when we approach to the said measure to be fulfilled, you see, for a certain world to be replaced with another world, in which now this world will be replaced with another world, which is the world of the Israelites. Let's get that. John 3:16. And this is the definition of John 3:16. John 3:16 is saying, for the Most High so loved the world. Which world, man? Here it is talking about the kingdom of heaven, man, aka the kingdom of Israel. You see? So this world is talking about empire or time, a certain period of time, a certain fulfillment of measurement, that he gave his only begotten son, man, and who come under the banner of his only begotten son is a prophet, man. That's where the prophet come in, man. You see, when you approach a certain fulfillment of time or a certain measure or changing of world, you have different signs showing up, man. You have this locust applause people, the Lord putting a spirit on people to protest, to break down these different statues, man, of slave trader. All of this aside, man, you need a certain people to interpret this sign. And that's where the role of a prophet comes in, man. Let's go to Jeremiah, man. That's where the role of a prophet and the incarnation come in, man. Because the Lord, the scripture tells you, the Lord have measured the time, man. And he does not start the time until the fulfillment measure come. So that is talking about empire and the changing of empire. One empire come, another empire go. You see, at the end of a certain empire, man, you need people to tell you this empire is coming to an end. That's where the scriptures that the spirit of the prophet are subject to a prophet, because the prophet needed to come back to tell you that we are about to experience a certain change or changing of worlds, man, a changing of time, man. You see, and that's where the idea of reincarnation comes in, man. So reincarnation is very deep. You see, this is Jeremiah 28:8. It says, "The prophet that have been before me and before thee of all the prophesied both against many countries and against the great kingdom of war and evil and of pestilence." So this is going to changing of world, man. All of these things mentioned here, all of this subset, man, wars, evil and pestilence. This is a sign which foretell that this world is coming to an end. See, that's why I told you the definition of John 3:16. See, I am giving you right now the definition of John 3:16. John 3:16 is very wide. It's going into changing of empire, a changing of world, a trading of press, if we will. See, so let's go back, because today I'm doing what we call news and prophet.
We have a very... This is Dob.
You have another news here to say UN1 of mass starvation, a biblical locust plug put $1 million on a brink of...
7. We have a very serious situation unfolding here. They're calling this now a biblical scale of locusts that are basically devouring everything. They can do so. They can cover a whole area, a whole farmland, and devour everything within 30 seconds. They can travel up to 150 kilometers a day. And what is different now about what we've seen in the past is that these swarms that were covering a large portion of the globe from Africa over to India, instead of dying out like they were saying, a fourth generation has spawned out of this. And they're saying that these pockets are up to 8,000 times larger than what we witnessed earlier this year. Some of these swarms are the size of major cities. And because people are not affected in the United States, they're not.
So here you have another problem of locusts. All of these are major signs to tell you this empire is coming to an end. Talking about the locust, what is the spiritual meaning behind having a swarm of locusts before the Lord brings judgment? You see, it simply means that the Lord wants to cripple certain people economy before judgment. You see, so if you know anything about the Lord, the scripture tells you the Lord is a man of war. You see, the Lord is a man of war. So let's get that. Let's get that from Exodus. See. Exodus 15 and 3, it says, the Lord Yahweh Hashem Yahushua is a man of war, and the Lord is his name. See, if you are a man of war, let's talk about on the S level. Let's say you are a general. You see, every renewed general, if you go back to history, every general have a certain strategy, a certain method he used to win wars. You see, and one of the commonly known method to win a war easily is to cripple your enemy economy. First, you start with the so-called propaganda. You see, let's say if you, the Qing dynasty wants to go to war with the Ming dynasty. You see, I'm talking about empires which ruled China. See, what they do is they set a propaganda campaign. You see, to boost their morale and to lower the enemy's morale. You talk shit about your enemy. That's where Psalm 18 comes in. When David was rapping about his enemy, that was a rap right there, man. See, that's called in another word on the SE level. That's called is known as propaganda. You see, you do what is called a propaganda campaign. And the case in point, when you go back to the Nazi Germany, they have a ministry of propaganda. See, that ministry was mainly focused on to create propaganda. See, a second stage is you cripple your enemy economy. See, that's why right now you have a trade war going on between China and America. If you see things like that, you should be able to understand we are coming, or we are approaching the time when we are about to experience trading places, man, between Jacob and Esau, or changing of world. The world of the Edomite will be taken out, and the world of Israel will be ushered in, which is the kingdom of heaven. And that will happen in a rough transition. You see, let's go 2 Ezra 9 and 1. He answered me and said, measure those the time diligently. So it is about time. That's why when a certain prophecy happen, it become a history. And how do you know a certain thing is a history? By measuring the time. So this happened in, let me give you an example. This happened in the 90s. Right now we are in 2020. So you measure the time that the 90s was before 2020. So that is the history. So if you measure the time, you will be able to understand we are approaching the end of this world, the end of this time. See, it measures the time diligent in itself, and when thou seest part of the sign past, which I have told thee before. And then thou understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world, you see. So going back to Hotia was speaking, you see. Hotia was speaking about if you want to go to a war with a certain country, what you do propaganda, you cripple your enemy economy, you put embargo, you see. And back in the days they used to put embargo. What they used to do is you laid your enemy, logistics. And what is logistics? Logistics is when you want to fight a war with a certain nation, you secure your chain of supply, man, like food and things like that. So if we want to put an embargo on a certain country, you go over there in the road in which they are transporting that food, you do what you call raid. See, that was the second stage if you want to go to a war with a certain country. The third stage is you form alliance. Right now you have the alliance of Gog and Magog and the alliance of America and the Jewish nation. You see, and since the Lord is a man of war, what he is doing now is what we call a war strategy. And how do you know that? By you measuring the time diligently. You see, when a certain measure comes into fulfillment, you understand, man, and take yourself. That's where the role of a prophet comes in. That's why we tell you a prophet have a major role in this whole process of creation. And right now we are coming into a height of creation, if you will. You see? So what the Lord now is doing is the so-called war strategy, man. The thing with locust is let's read the scripture. Exodus 10:4. It says, else thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring the locust into thy coast. Why is the locust? Why didn't the Lord blow out the map of the Egyptians? Why did he bring the locust? First and foremost, because the Lord is a man of war. You see, he have a certain way to bring down a nation, and by him sending the locust, he will break down to you in verse 5. It say, and they shall cover the face of the earth, and the one cannot be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remained unto you from the hail. And they shall eat every tree which grows for you out of the field. And they shall fill thy house, and the house of thy servant, and the house of the Egyptian, which neither thy father nor thy father's father have seen, since the day that they were upon the earth unto this day, and timed himself and went out of Pharaoh. So these locusts were supposed to eat every tree, every green tree, and by doing so, they crippled the Egyptian economy. You see, it's like how the general on the earth level they do, and they cripple an enemy economy so that they can go to war and win. That's the same thing the Lord is doing, man. That is the implication of this locust you are seeing on this other side of the world. You see, and the thing is, let's go back to this video. Dub 7, he tells you the people in America, they think that this will not affect them. You see, but what they don't know is the Lord, by attacking the other side of the world, he is creating a deficit and affecting the so-called as a global chain of supply. You see, if there is a deficit eventually, and the other side of the world, which is America, and whether they say this does not concern them, there will be a deficit. So the Lord, what he's doing is putting this world of balance.
Not seeing what's happening.
Let's listen.
They're oblivious to what's coming. The UN now warning that mass starvation is coming. These are their words. We're being told that it's going to begin by the end of this calendar year. This is what is happening in all these other countries right now. They've been decimated, their crops completely wiped out. And as you can see here, they say it's important to remember that they are destroying farm after farm month after month. There's no end in sight, and that this new fourth generation has spawned pockets 8,000 times larger. And when you have the UN stepping up making these comments, the same UN that they're trying to pull into the United States right now, it seems the American people do not see what's coming.
It seems the American people do not see what it's coming. That's why the scripture call America as a stout fellow, because of their arrogance. America has the worst Edomites. They're very arrogant. They're very arrogant. And in Egypt, these locusts, they covered the face of the whole nation. Nobody dared to go out. And that's where you get the scripture, the grinder shall cease. The grinder shall cease. And who was the grinder? The grinder, it is simply talking about the production. See? When you go back again in history, because for you to be able to understand the mystery of the Bible, you need to understand the history behind it. That's why prophecy, when the prophecy come to pass, it become history. If you read that history, if you read that fulfilled measure, you will be able to understand the future, because the scripture tells you there is no new things under the sun. And if you go back in history, the grinder, if you want to have, let's say, a flour out of corn, what do? You grind the corn to get flour out of it, so that you can cook something. So that that whole process is known as production. And when the scripture tells you the grinder will cease, man, what are you seeing, man? There is protest, there is coronavirus, nobody dares to go out, man. There's a grinder season. And right now there is one video I saw from Double 7. It was talking about the retail apocalypse. This retail shop are being closed out. You see. So let's address the things that Double 7 was speaking. The American people don't see what is coming, man. Let's go back to the video and then
it says right here, UN that they're trying to pull into the United States right now. It seems the American people do not see what's coming.
You see, it seems the American people do not see what is coming, because they are very stout, man. You see. So this is Revelation 18:7. Say how much he has glorified himself when he lived delicious. You see, lived delicious. So they think that delicacy will continue forever, man. What they don't know is the Lord have put America on a measure, and the America seem wanting. Let's see. See, so much torment and sorrow give her, for he has said in the heart, I sit a queen, and I am no widow, and I shall see no more sorrow. So speaking on that, see, let's go to the book of Daniel 5. The book of Daniel 5. So this is the book of Daniel 5 and 24. It say, and this is the writing that was written in many tekel in Apheres. This is the interpretation of the things, and many, the Most High has numbered thy kingdom and finished it. That is going to changing of worlds, man. When a certain kingdom come to an end, man, there is no even one day which will be added. You see, because the Lord, he measured the time since the beginning of this earth, as the Lord knew that the Babylonian Empire will rule for certain days, man. And how will the rest of the world know? Through his prophet. And that's why the prophet are known as the servant of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, or the mouthpiece of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, or the emissary. We carry the message of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai to convey upon the face of the earth about the given time, that this time is coming to an end. You see, 27. Tekel was weighed in the balance, and art found wanting. You see, so going back to Revelation 18 and verse is and verse 7, how much he has glorified himself and lived deliciously. So the people in America, they think that everything is good. They don't know what is going on. They think that they're in a good case. They don't know their kingdom have been measured and found wanting. You see, that's where destruction come in, man. Let's go back.
It says right here, sadly, most Americans don't even see what's happening because of everything going on in the news and that TV that controls their attention in their living room. That's all they're affixed on. So, what's crazy is they want to say, oh, thankfully here in the United States, we're not facing starvation yet. Well, yeah. When the rest of the globe is starving and the food's only coming from one spot, it's gonna get thinned out. It doesn't matter how you cut it. When other countries go into starvation mode, they're gonna start pulling on resources from other places, and this is gonna pull on supply.
You see, he's saying when the other side of the world, because of this locust, start experiencing starvation, there will be a shift. The food on the west will be transported to the east, so there will be deficit. You see, that's why the scripture tell you, Lady Liberty have lived in delicious, man. He don't know what the hell is going on. See, let me see. There was a certain news here. Let me see. Certain news. So let's finish on the
supplies from other places. And as we've seen China taking the meat out of this country en masse and even shutting down other processing plants, all of this is part of a bigger plan. One that I've been warning about, we've been discussing, and I'm going to continue to break down into further detail over here on D Live. So make sure.
So the grinder season, man. China is shutting down what? Production. What is that, man? That is Ecclesiastic 12. Ecclesiastic 12 and 3. In the day where the keeper of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves as the grinder cease because they are few. I broke down that word grinder, man. When you go back in the ancient time, if you want to have a flour from corn, you grind the corn. They didn't have a machine back then, man. So the whole process of you grinding corn to get flour, that is known as production, and that's what you have now. So China shutting down all of this production, and we will see another news. Cease because they are few, and those that look out the window be darkened. So I have a news here from W7, and here is the news. It say heads up. Up to 25,000 stores are now expected to close forever this year. The grinder season.
7. Taking a look at what's happening to our businesses across the country, both small and large. Last year, we had a record put into motion as JCPenney and many other companies stepped up and said they were closing down shop. This was before the whole pandemic thing crept onto the scene, followed by the whole riot thing that seemed to all be going hand in hand. All of this does, instrumentally taking out all the small businesses. Now what we have is a warning that 2,100 stores are going to close, or have closed, all within this past week. What they are expecting is as many as 25,000 stores to close this year, smashing last year's record of 9,300. I don't know what else.
So that right there, the fulfillment of ecclesiastic prophecy in the day when the keeper of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the blind that sees because they are few, and those that look out the window have been darkened. See, to substantiate my point, let's go to Isaiah, the book of Isaiah 24. See, and 1, behold, the Lord Yahweh Hashem Rashai makes the earth empty, and makes it waste, and turn it upside down, and scatter abroad the inhabitant thereof. That's what is going on. Yes, that's what is going on. See, another news. Another news we have. Let me see. Let's go to my history. I have a lot of news, man.
The trumpet.
You have what you call another news. This is about the war. So I broke down the process, which process we go through in order to have what we call the global conflict. We have what we call propaganda. That's why you are seeing it going on. Even back in the day, I told you if you want to have a war between the Ming dynasty and the Qing dynasty, what you do first is you demonize your enemy. The aim is so that you can get a justification to attack your enemy. The second thing is to raise the morale of your soldiers, man, and to lower the morale of your enemy. That is the whole thing about propaganda, and I broke it down to you. If you go to the back in history to the Nazi Germany, they have the so-called Ministry of Propaganda, in which the job of that ministry was to create propaganda, to conceive propaganda. That is the first stage toward war, and that stage you are seeing right now. The media in the West is demonizing China and Russia. It has been going for the longest. And another thing you have is the so-called trade wars, right? And we went to the locust, and we saw the spiritual sign of the locust. And the Lord is crippling the enemy economy so that he can bring it down in a fashion. And that's what happened in Egypt. You see, since the Lord is a man of war, like any other general, you see, you follow a certain procedure to win a war. It doesn't matter that the Lord needed to be sinking so that he can win a war against America. That is just a process. The second thing is you form alliance, man. All of these stages I am talking to you have already happened. The next stage is you secure your trade route. You secure you do what you seek to be economically independent. That's why we saw that news from Malati News, the formation of BRICS, China trying to dump American debit. All of that is a quest for China and Russia to be economically independent, or to find a way to circumnavigate the hegemony of the dollar. You see, because you can't fight a war and you depend on other people's currency to do trades, man. You won't win that war. You see, so they needed to be sure of their logistics to be economically independent, man. The next stage is war, and which bring me to this news. It say Trump order polar icebreaker fleet build up for strong Arctic security presence. And over there in the Arctic, you have what you call the Russian, man. The Russian have established a large military base on the Arctic. And when you know anything about strategic point here on Earth, where if you have a base, you can strike anywhere in the world. Another strategic point is the moon or space. Another is the Arctic. Another is the Middle East, because the Middle East is the mid or the center of this Earth. Another place is the Caribbean over there. That's why you see a lot of conflict in the Caribbean. You see a lot of conflict in the Middle East. Another place is the Far East. That's why you have the so-called South China Sea problem. You see, all of this strategic point I mentioned to you, you will have conflict going on, man. You see, but war will break out over there in the Middle East, and then it will spread all over the world. That's why you
administration making more military moves, so to speak, here in terms of these icebreakers. Now they're not going to be armed with weapons as you would see on a traditional vessel with cannons and things like that. These are strategic and even getting into certain areas like the Arctic. The problem has been we have only had one big icebreaker and then one medium-sized one. That's a big problem when Russia has all kinds, and they have been crisscrossing the Arctic for some time. They've been cutting out channels and pathways and have allowed countries like China and others to take a trade route all the way up and around into this area to get around and into Europe. So this has a lot of strategic importance, especially when they're up there trying to tap into all these resources. They're trying to lay claim to everything that's up here. It seems the Trump administration is no longer sitting back and sitting idle, so to speak. They're ordering new icebreakers to be ready to rock by 2029. A whole fleet of them.
So this is about preparing for war. Yes, preparing for war. Let me get Jeremiah 50. So. Jeremiah 51 is the word. That is the Lord Yahweh Hashem Rashai speaking against Babylon, against the land of the Chaldean by Jeremiah the prophet. He said, "Declare ye among the nation and publish, set up a standard, publish and conceal not." Talking about the prophecy, man. What we are declaring the changing of world. We are declaring a fulfillment of the certain measurement. We are declaring a replacement of empire and rulership. She say Babylon is taken, Babel is confounded, Merodach is broken, and in pieces her idol are confounded, her image are broken in pieces. For out of the north there come up a nation. Out of the north is the Arctic, man. Is the Arctic. You see, against her which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They shall remove, they shall depart, both men and beasts. In those days, in that time, says the Lord Yahweh Hashem Yashai, the children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together going and weeping. They shall go and seek the Lord Yahweh Hashem Yashai, their God. You see, that's what's going on. Verse 9, for lo, I will raise and a cause to come up against Babylon, an assembly of great nation from the north country. They shall set themselves in a array against her. That's why you are seeing China is dumping American debit. The next day you will see Japan. The next day you will see the NATO countries. The next day you will see Saudi Arabia and all of these other countries. Why? Because this other nation are sitting in a array against Babylon, man. Because they are tired of America being the harm of the earth. And they shall set in a array against her, and thence he shall be taken, the arrow shall be as a mighty expert. Talking about the nuclear missile. Some nuclear missile will come out of there in the Arctic, you see. As the arrow shall be as a mighty expert, and none shall return in vain, you see. So that talk is going to audio series. That's what this news is all about. So,
a sign of the times. Well,
let's go to this one here.
This isn't something that you see every day. This blood rainbow. It is a very unique situation here. This was caught in the skies of Calgary, Canada, as a woman was trying to catch some really good. sunset pictures. And then she caught this. Now, normally, you see your greens, your yellows, your blues, and everything else inside of a rainbow. They're saying, in this instance, all the stuff in the air that creates all the other colors was dissipated. They say that this was the only color available. All the other colors of the rainbow had been scattered away by air molecules and dust particles in front of this low-hanging sun. So when all these things come together just right,
Thousands have gathered to show solidarity with U.S. protests over the killing of George Floyd. He died after a Minneapolis cop kneeled on his neck for nearly 9 minutes. The worldwide events echoed peaceful messages in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. In South America, hundreds of protesters came together outside Rio de Janeiro's state government building on May 31st. They demanded an end to police brutality against Black people within Rio's working-class neighborhoods, known as favelas. Iranians held a small demonstration outside the Swiss embassy. 2 Syrian artists painted a mural in memory of Floyd in war-torn Idlib. And in Israel, a group gathered to protest the killing of Iyad al-Halak, an autistic Palestinian man, as well as Floyd. In London, demonstrators marched through the city and around the U.S. embassy, defying the UK's coronavirus restrictions that prohibit mass gatherings. Protesters kneeled in unison, chanting "No justice, no peace" in Trafalgar Square. George Floyd! While the protests have mostly been peaceful, there have been some clashes with the police. And statues of slave traders were torn down across England. Protesters threw the statue of slave trader Edward Colston into the harbor on Sunday. In Belgium, city officials removed the statue of colonial King Leopold II. This came after protesters vandalized and torched the statue. Protests against police brutality also formed throughout Berlin. Demonstrators gathered around the U.S. embassy chanting, "Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives..." In Italy, Black Lives Matter protesters surrounded the U.S. consulate. The country is only beginning to ease lockdown, so they appear to be social distancing. Across France, more than 23,000 protesters took to the streets. Demonstrators in Paris kneeled in silence for 8 minutes and 46 seconds in homage to Floyd. In Ireland, over 150 protesters gathered with signs reading "The